Hello beautiful people, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. It's Whitney here again in another video, and in today's video we're going to be making this beautiful underbust gown with basque and ruffles. If this is what you would like to learn, keep on watching, like my videos, share with your family and friends, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my videos in the nearest future. So without too much talking, let's get to the honey of this video. Let's go. I love you. Hey beauty, welcome to my channel. First, we are going to be starting with the pattern drafting, and the first thing I normally do, if you are not new to this channel, you know that I'll be creating my block. So I'll be using the largest parts of my body to create my block, and because this gown is from the upper part to the hip part, so the largest part of the client's body is the hip. So if the largest part of the client's body is the bust, don't forget to use the bust. So I used my hip divided by 4 to get my block, and here I'm marking out my waistline measurement. So that is just what I did. So I'm just going to draw a straight line, that's my waistline, and I am drawing a straight line to form my block, the block that I originally want. All right, so once that was done, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to mark out my underbust measurement, because we are going to be needing it in this tutorial. So I marked out my underbust measurement. So this is me marking out my underbust measurement plus ½ inch. Don't forget, anytime I am drafting a pattern, I always like all the allowances to be on the pattern so that I don't have to worry next. And my underbust is not too far from the waist because my client is a plus size. So when you are drafting for a plus size, don't let the underbust don't let it be far from the waist so that it can give it a perfect fit. So now the next thing I'm going to be doing is to mark out my shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus ½ inch, and then the shoulder slope of 1 inch, and the neck width of 3 inches, and then I'm connecting the neck width to the shoulder slope just like we normally do. And now I'm marking out my armhole depth. I have already made a tutorial on this channel on how to calculate your armhole. I'm going to drop the link in the description box below in case you are finding it difficult to calculate the armhole depth that you want. So now I'm just trying to mark out my armhole curve, and this is basically the way we do the basic bodice pattern. So now once I was done doing that, it's time to create my basque. Because the gown is not starting from the waist, it went downwards a little, so you have to measure what the length you want the basque to stop on your client's body. For me, I used about 30 inches. I used about 24 inches in this case, but I still went downwards by another 5 inches, so it was like 30 inches. So this is my hip line that I am marking. So now from the waist, the basque started from the hip line, if you check the thumbnail very well. So that is why I marked out my hip line. So now what I'm doing now is I divided my bust divided by 4, and I'm going to be marking out my bust measurement divided by 4. So once that was done, I'm going to my waist, and then I'll mark my waistline divided by 4. Then I'll also add my 2 inches allowance. You can put a dart on this dress if you want, but for this particular dress I'm not putting any dart because it's just a simple free dress and the client does not want any paparazzi so whatsoever. So, and trust me, it fits her like a glove. So now, like a glove. So I have just drafted my basic pattern from the bust to the waist to the hip, and now I'm going to be working with my neckline. So the neck width I'm working with is about 3.5 inches, and then I'll just mark out 1 inch because this is for the back. We are going to be using this for the back first before we go ahead to the front. And I'm trying to manage my pattern paper, so I want to draft everything on this same paper. So I'm marking out my back neckline first, which is 1 inch depth, and then I'm marking out where I want my yoke to stop, which is about 8 inches. So before I determine where my yoke is going to stop, I went ahead to mark out my bust. See, it was about 35 inches long. So I measured it on my client's body, and I measured out from the upper part. I took to 35 inches, and then I'm going to be using my pattern master to connect the line in a V shape to my hip line, just like that. And that's how it's going to be. So now, for the upper part, the next thing is to determine the length of my yoke. All right. So I'm just trying to explain that this pattern is for the front. There is no zip allowance. So when you are cutting yours on your main fabric, you have to add your zip allowance to it. All right. So you move it forward a bit and create the zip allowance before you cut it out, because there is no zip allowance on this pattern. So if you are new to my channel, you're welcome to the channel of beautiful people. On this channel, we do everything DIY, and I also encourage the best people every Saturday. So if this is the channel you like to be, you're welcome. Thank you for joining me. And for the old bees here, you're welcome. Thanks for being here, and thanks for always coming back. I love you all. I love the newbies. I love the old G's. I love all of you. Thank you for tuning in. So now this is the back. So because the dress is having a plain material at the down part, so the Ankara is just going to stop at the under bust area. So that is how I want it to be for the back. Just going to stop at the under bust area, and as you can see, I took out my zip allowance. Like I told you, the zip allowance is not attached to the pattern, so I took out my zip allowance, and then I just made sure that the pattern stopped at the under bust. I wanted to first mark out where my yoke will stop before, but I realized that in front the yoke started from the under bust, so that is why I changed my mind and I placed the yoke on the under bust too for the back. So now I'm cutting the down part with my plain material. I already added my interfacing, and then I added my zip allowance, as you can see, because we are using the same pattern for the front and the back. So just cutting out my zip allowance now, and that is it. So this is how it's going to be sitting. So the full back is already set. Now let's work on the front. So moving on to the front pattern. So what we are going to be doing, I am first marking out my neckline, and I marked out about 7 inches depth. Remember, the neck width was 3.5, so marked out 7 inches depth, and I just connected it with a V neckline with a curve like that. And then from the under bust, I just went down by ½ inch, and then I'm going to be connecting from that neckline to my under bust with a curve. So I'm trying to get a perfect curve, because I'm sorry, my son broke this thing, and it is what will have been useful now. So what I'm just going to do is that I'm trying to mark out my bust pan measurement. So I marked out my bust pan measurement plus ½ inch, and I marked it all the way down. So my bust pan measurement plus ½ inch. So from the upper part, I measured out my bust point, where my bust point is starting. That is where that leg stopped at the upper part, and that leg went down to the basque line. So I'm just trying to create the dart. This dart is not necessary on this tutorial. I'm not placing any darts, but I just want to use it to serve as a guide for me, so that by the time I'll be creating my curve, I'll know where it is going to sit. So now I just use my free hand to create my curve like that. You see, I'm just using my free hand to create my curve like that, just to to make it sit on the other bust. The reason why I went down from the other bust by 1/2 inch is that by the time I sew it together, it's going to jump up, so it's going to sit exactly on the under bust. All right, so now I just measured out half of my shoulder measurement, and then I connected the straight line to join it, so that everything can be in one piece and I can understand what I'm doing. So now I'm trying to cut out all what I have drafted earlier. So at this point, I decided not to skip this part because I also want you to learn from it. At this point, I realized that I already made a mistake. This part, the front part, is not as tiny as that. It's not meant to be that tiny. So I already cut it, and then I realized that I have already made a mistake. So I quickly used my masking tape to gum everything together. And the other part, the big part, the yoke is meant to have some, a tiny space. I'm going to drop the picture and show you. It's supposed to have a tiny space, and it's not meant to be that tiny. It's meant to have space so that the plain fabric can show at the other side. So I just drew out a new line, as you can see, and that is the correct one. So I'm cutting it out. So I cannot hide my mistakes from you. It's part of learning. So that is why I did not skip that part. So I just used my masking tape to glue everything together, and I redrew my line, and I realized that this was a perfect one. So this is what I'll be using to cut my fabric. So the yoke, we are going to be using Ankara fabric to cut the yoke, and we're going to be cutting it on fold. So now, the reason why we created this line, now this is the reason. We are going to be making a slash and spread here, just to create more room for the bust. If I cut it exactly the way the pattern is, it will just sit on the bust and press the breast, and you don't want that. You want it to look ready-made as much as possible. So that is why I created that line. So now I just slashed the line, almost getting to my shoulder, and then I placed it on my Ankara fabric the way I want it to be, and I'm just going to be opening it up. So that opening is to create more room for the bust. All right, I hope you understand what I'm saying. If you don't understand what I'm saying, watch what I'm doing. So I've expanded it by 4 inches, and then I'm just going to cut it out. Just trace it out, make sure that it is cut out like that, and by that you've created more room. So by the time you are attaching it to your main dress, you just gather it to the down part of the dress, and you make sure that it is fitting the space that we created earlier, and that's it basically. So now we are cutting the down part. Now we don't need to do any slash and spread, just cut it normally. So here I was trying to manage my fabric, and then I was just turning it round and round, so to get a perfect placement for my pattern, so that everything can sit clean and fresh. So I'm just trying to do that, and then I'm going to be cutting it out. If you have not liked my video, you are just making me think as if maybe what I'm doing does not make sense. So if you have not liked this video, first of all, click the like button. That like button is so important to me. It makes me believe that yes, what I'm doing is meaningful. I'm not just talking. All right, thank you. So now I've joined the upper part of the back. I joined it before placing the lining. That is why it is looking this neat, and that is the same thing I'll be doing to the front. So this is it. I have joined the front. As you can see, I pleated it a little so that it can accommodate the space that we created, and you see that plain fabric is getting to the bust part, which is how it's meant to be, and everything is clean and fresh. So I joined everything before placing the lining on top of it, so it made it easier. So now I'm just going to be joining it with the allowances that I created, and this was how it was looking after giving it a very good press. Only the sides that I did not give the perfect press, but I'm still going to press it much later. So now it's time to create the gathers at the hemline. So you're just going to measure what you have there round or round. You're going to measure it and you multiply whatever you have by 2 or by 3 or by 4, depending on the amount of fabric that you have and depending on how full you want it to be. If you want it to be very full and you don't have enough fabric, just multiply it by 2. But if you have enough fabric, you can multiply it by 3 or more. And once that was done, I gathered it. I cut out a strip of 7 inches wide, and it was the length of what I had there times 2. And then I just went ahead to pleat it all around. I gathered it all around and I saw it, and it gave me this perfect dress. This dress looked really beautiful on my client and she totally loved it. Thank you guys for watching. Till I see you in the next one. I love you and I care. Bye. Papa.